From the studios of the Optimism Institute, welcome to Blue Sky, where we share stories and insights to remind us that there is always blue sky above. Sometimes you just have to get your head above the clouds to see it. I'm your host, Bill Burke. One of the great joys of hosting the Blue Sky podcast is meeting remarkable young people who are doing incredible work to make the world a better place. Today's guest is one of these and was introduced to me by another Blue Sky alum, Sam Pressler. Julie Roland has a background and list of accomplishments that are both varied and remarkable, especially when you consider that she's still just in her early 30s. She's a former Navy lieutenant commander and helicopter pilot with over 10 years of military service, leading high-performing teams in mission-critical operations across the globe. Julie earned a JD in 2024 and in 2025 an LLM in Global Business Law from Columbia University. In her free time, she founded a local arts and community building nonprofit, Just Trying to Make Friends. She's a stand-up comic and magician, and is also actively involved in numerous local and national organizations dedicated to service. Today, professionally, she's a district director for a New York State government official. As you'll soon hear, this is one amazing person, and I hope you enjoy this Blue Sky conversation with Julie Roland as much as I did. Julie Roland, welcome to the Blue Sky podcast.
Thanks so much for having me. Good to be here.
It's great to have you on. You have just an incredible background, so varied, so many different things. It's hard to even know where to start. But so I take the easy way out and start with your childhood. Did you have an interest in flying or the Navy or any of those things growing up? And if so, when did you first realize that? And if not, why did you end up in the path you went on?
So I was not one of those kids who saw the Blue Angels fly and the rest is history. Rather, when I was 5, I started watching The West Wing, which I think cemented patriotism for me. It gave me a very idealistic fantasy of what it looks like to serve your country, and just got me thinking about government in general. And simultaneously, I started reading Harry Potter, which made me want to fly in a very magical sense. And so I think as I grew up, I was just interested in policy and government and service. And then I was also interested in flying, but in a magical sense. This is the same thing that led me to do a lot of magic tricks. I started doing magic around 5. And I think there was a moment, I was already going to do ROTC. I was in ROTC, and there was one summer when I was on an aircraft carrier and I see the pilots flying. And that's when it occurred to me, aviation would actually fulfill a magical dream from my childhood. And then ROTC, I found myself in, I think, as an extension of a commitment to service that started very young.
Amazing. So you did ROTC in high school?
I did ROTC in college. And so
okay, when you're at Penn. Okay.
Yep. So when I was applying to colleges, I looked at the Naval Academy, ended up getting an ROTC scholarship. So I went to Penn. The Navy paid for me to go to Penn, but I wasn't seeking a dream to become a Blue Angel. I was looking to serve. I say that they said the magic words, which were teamwork, leadership, service, see the world, and free college. But so then once I'm there and I'm on a summer deployment, I'm on active duty summer after my sophomore year of college, that's when I see aviation happening. And I think, oh gosh, that's actually another childhood dream, is this magical one. What if I completed my service as a pilot?
Incredible. So you're the first to mention a West Wing Harry Potter combo, but it makes a lot of sense. And I will say, I think that Harry Potter, it's become this massive thing, and theme park rides and all that. Harry Potter had huge influences on a lot of kids. If nothing else, the first time they'd ever read a book that was longer than 100 pages, right? And just an incredible phenomenon. It's amazing that it had that influence on you.
I learned to read on Harry Potter, so I was one of those also. But yeah, I know that I begged my mom for a magician at my 5th birthday. So it's right around that time that magic is becoming very interesting to me. And now I've been doing magic tricks for 27 years. And similarly, around the same time, I think have been passionate about service at the same time. And I think that Harry Potter really also, he is a great example of good versus evil. And there are so many lessons that can be learned. I think now there's a different context for Harry Potter today in the way that we think about the books. But as a child, they were really inspirational.
Amazing. So you went to the University of Pennsylvania, your ROTC. Did you go right from Penn to the Navy, or was there law school in between? Or walk us through your progression there.
Yes. So the day that I commissioned was also the day that I graduated college. So there was commencement, and then I ran over and put my uniform on and became an officer. A few weeks later, I reported to Pensacola, Florida for flight school. It was immediate. I finished flight school. I moved to San Diego. I started deploying. It was a full military track. And then it wasn't until I got my second set of orders to San Diego after deploying and being in a fleet squadron and being an aircraft commander for this helicopter. It's only after years of that, I get my second set of orders to San Diego. And I realized I might have actually relative to deploying, I might have more free time. That's when I take the LSAT and I go to law school in the end in my free time during my beginning in my second set of orders.
And so you were a helicopter pilot. And my research says you were in the Persian Gulf, South China Sea, all over the world.
Yes, not so much the Atlantic Ocean, but everywhere else, I'd say. I've seen a lot of this globe by sea, it's been a privilege.
Well, so I came to know of you through Sam Pressler, who's all about, connecting people and the connections that so many of us are missing in society today. And you started something called Just Trying to Make Friends. And you were, I believe, in California and realizing it's not always easy to have a sense of community. Can you walk us through that? Because I think it's something that a lot of us are yearning for. One of the things that stands between us and an optimistic outlook is just we feel lonely or isolated. So it's a big question, big subject. But could you talk about how you got into that?
Absolutely. So there are a lot of moving pieces involved, but I met someone in 2018, right before my first deployment as a pilot, who was a comedian in Los Angeles. We become friends, but we meet randomly as strangers. We become friends. And in the end, she and I start this project together. So she is a piece that comes in later of how I meet comedians in LA. But the reason this idea is in my head in the first place is because when I was in flight school, I was going to New Orleans a lot in my free time just to experience the culture. I was not far away. I end up running in this circle with a lot of musicians. I support some of their musical careers, and they wanted to do a house show for me. But I wasn't home. I was shortly thereafter deployed a lot. My home was an aircraft carrier. Finally, I meet this friend in LA who's a comedian. I go on a deployment, and by the time I get back, these musician friends want to come visit in San Diego and they want to do a house show. So I reach out to this comedian friend and I think, I want to have a night where lots of people can come enjoy this band that wants to come play, but also you're a comedian. I want to elevate you and feature you. And I've accumulated different friends through the years who have different arts. And wouldn't it be nice if I only have one night to have everyone to my backyard because I have this crazy job and I'm not home a lot? Let's do it big. And this comedian friend had a similar idea. So anyway, we collaborate. We decide what better name than Just Trying to Make Friends. I think she maybe suggested it, and I have no rebuttal. I'm like, that's the name. But the idea was basically in a backyard. What if we brought together all of our friends, tell them to bring their mutual friends, and anyone who has an art to share, let's make space for it. And the goal, though we didn't articulate it exactly this way in the beginning, but it became clear, was to promote the arts and build community. And the idea for the first show, we weren't trying to build something then. We were just trying to have people together in the backyard and share and enjoy this art. But then people responded so strongly to it. They, wanted to know, when's the next one? And can I share my art? And I just made so many friends here. And are you, please, next month, can you do another? that we started, that we, had people who wanted to do another. So we did another. And then in a year, we did 28 shows in 4 cities. We reached so many folks that we were like, we've got something on our hands here. This is very special. And then COVID hit. And so you're right that I think there's in general always a need for connection, and I think the arts are an incredible forum for that. But coming out of COVID, people were craving connection more than ever. And I think they had missed live shows. And so, yes, I already felt levels of isolation having moved to a new city where I didn't know anyone. And then it's hard to make those friends when you're gone many months of the year. But coming out of COVID, everyone was feeling similarly isolated, I think. And so then it really took off when we were able to come back into the backyard, once COVID was seemingly, once things were safe enough for us to resume the show. That's when things really, really kicked off. And suddenly it became clear, this is bigger. This is so much bigger than we thought. And that's when I incorporated that as a nonprofit. And, we moved on from there.
Amazing. Right here, I'll say, let's hear it for the power of quality pop culture. Julie Roland was inspired to think about working for her country from watching West Wing, and developed her interest in flying and magic by reading Harry Potter. Her Navy career took shape after her experience in ROTC, and she had remarkable experiences there. Following that work, she developed an interest in community building through the arts and founded Just Trying to Make Friends in 2019. To learn more about all of this, let's get back to our conversation. Let's talk about the arts, because you also gave a TED Talk about how the arts can bring people together and the importance of the arts. One of the things I like about your work is that I think you have a pretty broad definition of the arts. I mean, you're a magician, you have musicians, you have comics. Can we talk about the sort of range of art that you have embraced in your work? And then also, why do the arts bring us together so well?
Okay, well, I'll answer that one first, maybe. I think in general, when people are doing art, the way I've seen people engaging with art is it's an expression. It's often an emotional expression, but it's coming from within, and that can be an act of vulnerability. It certainly is a very open act. If you're sharing it, if you're sharing that art with your community, takes a level of vulnerability, sometimes some courage to do so. And I think when you lead by an example of sharing your internal expression, and you are inviting others to do the same, you're also inviting them to interact with you in a more authentic way than when we are hiding our more, when we're just hiding ourselves more, curating our external sides more. But when you're sharing your art, there's something to it that it has to be authentic. It's difficult to fake it. And the act of sharing it is, I think, creates a welcoming environment because you've gone first. And there's so many more reasons why I think the art is conducive to connection, to include that it just is a conversation starter. That when, after we've all just enjoyed someone playing music, even though they've invited us to interact with them or engage with them in a way and their emotions, it's also just something I shared with the person next to me, that we just experienced something of listening to their music. And sometimes that's just all you need to kind of lubricate a conversation is, oh, hey, stranger, how wonderful was that? So there are infinite ways in which art can open the doors and facilitate that connection. And so on that, on the flip side of it, that's to your first question, is that's why I try to keep a very broad definition of art in terms of how we curate the show. One, I want to make sure that anyone who has anything that feels like an art and an expression for them, that we can give them a stage or a platform or somewhere to share it. And we want to really be super welcoming and supportive and help, give them the tools too. I say in announcements during the show at least once, if you have been playing guitar in your room quiet, without sharing it with anyone for the last 10 years, if you've been writing poetry and you've never read it out loud, if you've always wondered what it would feel like to do stand-up comedy and you've written jokes on your phone, but you have yet to try it out, reach out. We want to give you a stage. So sometimes we're booking acts that it's really their first time in an open mic kind of way, but we also have these very professional touring artists. So the variety show works both in terms of what the art is, but also people's skill levels or just comfort levels with performing with audiences. But that also means we've got, I say we always do magic, music, and comedy, and then everything else. So yes, we've had juggling, we have had crochet, we've had a fire sword dancer, and
Stop.
we have had,
Those like things like swallowing the swords and stuff?
like dancing with it in that case. But we also had someone who danced with swords and snakes. So we had that. We had someone who played the trumpet, but had designed their own trumpet so it would blow fire when they blew through it. So the idea is really just, what are you doing that's creative? Do you want to share it? Can we encourage you to share it? Share it with us. And as a result, after every show, people will come up to me and say, hey, I have this one thing I kind of do. I juggle a little, or like, oh, I kind of play with the yo-yo, but would you want a yo-yo? I'm like, yes. If you are having fun and it feels like a creative outlet for you to engage in XYZ and you're interested in sharing it, then we want to expand the definition of art for you. Now, that being said, I am often reluctant to call myself an artist because my art is magic. I find a little bit more of a craft, like there can be all these arguments. And I'm such a novice that I'm like, out of respect to the artist, I don't want to call myself one. But I think ultimately for the cause, I want to legitimize those who are pursuing creative opportunities in any way. And I think that it's empowering to think of yourself as an artist. And so I want to use that term very generously and invite people to use it too.
Amazing. And I think one of the reasons, and that art brings humans together, is it's one of the only things that's uniquely human. That other animals can see, smell, think in some ways. I don't believe there's some, I read something the other day where they think there's some obscure animal that might do something approaching art. But basically, art is one of the only things that is uniquely human.
Well, something that I find so special or think about a lot that is similar is there are so many moments where I can feel sad about the state of the world, or that humanity is capable of XYZ negative thing. And then I remember that we as humans dance and that we do go to magic shows. And like when I can just be so inspired by seeing humans interact with art that I think, gosh, on the whole, whatever horrible nonsense humans can get up to, we're also getting up to this. And it's so beautiful and magical. It blows my mind that, we as just existing here have chosen to spend some of our time dealing with wonder, which is what I think is like the currency of magic, or, dealing with just movement as is the currency of dance, and to find ways to make these things so beautiful. It restores my faith in humanity all the time.
Completely. And so you've mentioned these shows. Can you paint us a picture? Because they're very, as I understand them, very sort of grassroots, very accessible, affordable, very much literally sometimes backyard kind of shows. Can you explain how this comes together? Because I know there are people out there, and you also talk about how hard it can be to meet new people in a new city, and you've moved around a fair amount yourself. So paint us a picture of how these are set up, because there may be people listening too who either want to get involved as an offshoot of what you're doing or start their own. Paint a picture for how this works, how it's set up, how people can find out about it and get to these events.
Totally. So the show is called the Just Trying to Make Friends show. That being said, we also love to collaborate with other groups that are trying to put on similar shows. So sometimes we are just a co-producer that any kind of event that shares our mission of promoting the arts and building community will help. But assuming you're coming to our main show, the Just Trying to Make Friends show, here's what you can expect. First of all, you're going to meet me at the door when you walk in, and I greet everyone the same way, which is, welcome to the Just Trying to Make Friends show. I'm Julie, and I'm your first friend. And then I generally say something like, The show's going to start around 5 o'clock, but the friendship making starts right now, lasts forever. And then I give them a little rundown of what they can expect. Today's show is going to feature magic, music, comedy, but also, and then I highlight the other kinds of acts that we might have. And then I encourage them to go to whatever we've installed that day for the pre-show friendship making, which often includes a friendship bracelet making station, or we've had finger painting, or we have visual artists who are displaying their photography or their ceramics at a table. So you can go check that out. So there's all of these things for when you first arrive that you don't feel awkward. If you've come and you don't have any friends, there's stuff for you to do before the show starts. And I say, all right, well, any questions? Great. Well, then go ahead, go on in there, enjoy, and introduce yourself to people. They'll be expecting it. And so in all of these different ways, it's already been in the name of the show, but I'm really trying to emphasize from the moment you step there, truly forget everything you thought about being inhibited when it comes to introducing yourself to strangers in a way to, where you're trying to make friends with them. When you're here, it's actually okay to try to get to know the people you don't know. So that's a critical part. It's just everybody's got to be down for that contract as they come in. And so then they do. They're mingling. They're looking at the ceramics. Maybe they're doing a puzzle together. We'll do that. Or, maybe they are immediately making friendship bracelets. And then at a certain point, we start the show. I kick it off. I host. I generally sprinkle a few magic tricks in the beginning. And then I introduce our acts. And you'll see over the course of the show, maybe generally some stand-up comedy, maybe some improv, maybe some sketch comedy. You might see some poetry or some storytelling. Maybe there's juggling or yo-yo or some outside of the box. We've had burlesque, we've had drag. Like I said, we've had fire sword dancing and then a snake charmer. And we always end with a musical headliner. And that's because I think there's something grounding about the concert feeling. And so when the show ends, I like that the last thing that happened before the show ends is that everyone experienced watching a songwriter share. And it's worked out well for us because you can have all this high energy and fun and silly stuff. But by the end, I want people again in a place where they've just shared something emotional together. And then when the show is over, I say, okay, the show is over. But you don't have to go home and you can stay here. Stick around, hang out, make friends with each other. And so I encourage people to stay for as long as they want. Generally, I try to make sure that there's nothing I got going on after. And I encourage all of the performers to stick around and chat with each other. And generally what you see are people, even if it's a lunchtime show, people are there in the backyard until dark. They don't want to leave. They find themselves in great conversations and it's really special. And then also you asked, what's the environment? We started in the backyard. We were hosting it out of my backyard for a long time in San Diego. Sometimes we would go to LA and find friends' backyards. Eventually we started getting invited to be in breweries and cabaret spaces. We partnered with theaters. We did a show at Soho House. But everywhere that we have been, we have made sure that it's free to enter. And that is because part of this building community and promoting the arts is to lower the barrier of entry to those things that you shouldn't have. I fully believe that artists should be paid enormously for what they're sharing. But I also want people to be able to enjoy and experience wonderful art without having to pay for it. As in, it should fall on the middleman maybe, or we should find these ways to support the arts without that cost burden, sometimes having to fall on people. Essentially, there are people who, even if the ticket's $15, that might be prohibitive. And I don't want anyone's ability to pay or not pay to determine whether they can come and make friends. So that's been an important pillar too. So you just roll up and you don't have to know anybody. You don't have to have any money in your pocket, and you're going to come in and see a great show and you're going to make some friends.
There's a lot worth reflecting on here. Art is sharing, Julie Roland says, and sharing art leads to community. Absolutely. And art can instill hope in humanity. That's something I agree with wholeheartedly and have experienced many times in my own life. When I take in a great work of art, whether that's a painting, a movie, a live performance, or even magnificent architecture, it makes me realize how remarkable our human species truly is. It's no wonder that art has proven to be such a great vehicle for Julie's just trying to make friends. Another reason I think she's been so successful is the way in which she's appealing to the child in all of us. It's funny, I hadn't thought of it this way until this description. It almost, in all the best ways, it almost feels childlike in that if you're you watch young kids at a playground, they get to a playground and they might not know anybody, but before you know it, they're on the seesaw, they're pushing the swing, and they're running around. It just sort of happens. Adults at the playground, not so much, right? But it seems like you right at the door, it's like, "Hi, I'm Julie. I'm your first friend," and it's got that sort of playground feel to it. Is that a fair way to describe it?
Thanks for picking up on that. Yes, I love that observation. I'd say there are a lot of things I'm doing unintentionally, but I am intentionally trying to code some things into the way we put the show on, because I think that childlike sense of wonder, that youthfulness is associated with that lack of inhibitions that keeps us from just being playful and saying hi and being ourselves. So examples of that is, yes, the way that I introduce it, maybe I'm just leading with this playfulness, perhaps, but also the finger painting stations or the friendship bracelet making stations. Like, these are very summer camp, preschool art room vibes. I also almost always am wearing overalls in the show, which I find to be like rather Nickelodeon. The banner that we have is all of these painted handprints that have gone on that we did at a show. So it's all very homemade. It feels like just a kindergarten art project. So there are a lot of things like that the way our Instagram looks, it's very bright colored. I mean, people have said it's sort of Nickelodeon, Cartoon Network. It's very like splash of color summer camp. But all of these things are in a way to subconsciously just get you re-engaging with that childlike sense that we all have in us. And I think a lot of us really miss getting to sit in that.
So, Julie, back to you and what you're all about. If I had told someone, yeah, I'm going to interview this woman and she was a helicopter pilot in the Navy, you want to guess what she's doing now? They seem like such different. You have a very unique set of skills and interests and backgrounds. You know, a helicopter pilot is intense. It's detail. It's machinery. It's one mistake and bad things happen. You did magic when you were little, but like in the Navy, did you have that sort of playful side that you had to hold back, or was it part of what you did there? Did you build community in the Navy? I'm really curious to know about you because you're a pretty multifaceted person.
Well, I appreciate that question. First of all, I only just got out of the Navy this June in 2025, and the first Just Trying to Make Friends show was in 2019. So 6 years that I'm in the Navy, I'm wearing overalls and finger painting here and there, in my free time. So, yes, even while I was an active duty aircraft commander and everything, like, this was certainly a part of me then. But even before the show, when I first got to flight school, I suddenly find myself in an environment that is very regimented. I'm studying all the time. It's of course very precise. That you want people treating aviation like it's life or death, because it is. So those are the stakes. And so I needed a creative outlet. And I think I had been, I was so privileged to be in spaces where I was around creative people a lot growing up. I mean, just going to college, I was around artists. I had access to cameras to make movies if I wanted to and things like that. And my mom was a poet also. And so growing up, I met some of her friends. So I was lucky to be exposed to the arts and artists growing up. And I think I took for granted the creative spaces I was in. So when I was then in this very regimented headspace, I realized I needed more art myself. And so that's when I went out and just bought watercolors and acrylic paints and just tried to get a little bit more involved myself. It wasn't enough. That's when I started going to New Orleans. I meet these musicians. I was seeking out some creative outlets, but also I did look for it within the Navy also. I have done magic on every single ship I have ever been on. I've also played guitar and performed original songs on at least 2 aircraft carriers. And I also believe I was the first and probably last person to sing and play at their winging ceremony. When I was in flight school, I discovered that the chaplain on base was a drummer. I found another kid in flight school who played the trumpet and piano. And then I was playing guitar and we wrote a song. And at our winging ceremony, we played a song about getting our wings. And I don't think that that's ever happened before at a winging ceremony. An original song played by the chaplain and 2 flight students, 2 freshly minted pilots. So, early on, I'm like looking for ways, I think, because I can't help it, but I'm looking for ways to inject that kind of creative edge. Some other anecdotes are just like I painted a mural on the wall of one room in my squadron when I was, I was flying helicopters in the squadron, but I flew, also brought in some other pilots with me. But I made this sketch. I submitted it to my commanding officer. He said, "Go ahead and paint the wall." Sure, yeah, liven it up in there. So there have been things like that that I tried to seek out, and you don't know that painting a mural is necessarily an option in the military, but I definitely ask. I definitely brought forward a lot of kooky ideas, and sometimes they'd go for them. And then also, doing magic around the boat all the time, you get a little bit of a reputation. Then eventually there'd be admirals calling me in to, like they'd see me from across the hall or this or that and saying, "Oh, we've got a distinguished visitor. This is Admiral so-and-so. Roland, could you do some magic for them?" I'd be like, "Yes, sir." Sure thing, of course.
Okay. So that good, because I wanted to ask you this. So the Secretary of the Navy is on I'm making this up, and they say, "Roland, we want a trick." What is your go-to? What is your big? Come on, there's got to be one. If you got one thing to impress the Secretary of the Navy who's on your ship, and they say, "Roland, we need some magic," what's the trick?
Okay, well, I'm gonna do a card trick because on the aircraft carrier, that's what I'm bringing is a deck of cards. I'm not bringing, a box.
You don't have a top hat and a rabbit.
I'm not going to saw anyone in half on the boat. It's too involved. The liability is insane.
Yes.
So, it's going to be a card trick. And normally, like, if I'm doing a show, I have an opener. We ease the audience in before my finale. I only got one trick. I guess I got to jump to the finale. I would say crowd favorites in the Navy have been, there's one where the card ends up, I say, "Okay, I've done all these tricks. You probably assume that I've used sleight of hand. For this one, I don't want it to be so easily explained. This one uses sleight of mouth." And then I put the entire deck of cards in my mouth, and then eventually I pull them out, and then folded in my mouth is the card I unfolded. That one's a crowd pleaser. And then the other one, which is a classic, David Blaine does this trick. It's a classic among magicians, is that we slice open an orange and the card's in the orange. That
you
one.
You can do that? You've got that one?
Yeah, I can do that one. I mean, I can pull it out of a tomato.
In your literal bag of tricks? A tomato?
I mean, I've done it once at a Just Trying to Make Friends show where I dumped out a bag of, different fruits and stuff. And I asked the audience, pick which one we're going to slice into. And then it was
Stop.
Yeah, but I really want to.
No, you can't. No, don't tell me. I don't want to know. I love magic, and I'm always like, I'm that guy with my jaw on the floor. So that's why I asked, because I still remember a kid's birthday party where they had a magician come, and it was just like the coolest thing. And I got this cheap deck of trick cards. I never really was good at it. I fumbled too much with my fingers, but that's amazing.
I think that's how I got stuck on magic, though, was I must have seen a magician at a birthday trick party and thought, okay, I want to learn how to do whatever that is. It also occurred to me, my very first day on the aircraft carrier as a pilot, my first deployment as a pilot, my bosses find out that I can do magic. And then they essentially order me to do a magic show in front of the entire squadron. And so it's like, we're in the South China Sea. I mean, I had just flown onto the aircraft carrier from the Philippines. We're somewhere. And in the middle of the ocean, I'm, oh my God, this is how I'm about to meet everybody I'm about to work with and be stuck on this ship with. That trick, the card appeared in my boss's like bomber jacket, that when it was gone, and so that one, though that one's a difficult one to pull off all the time. I pulled that off my first day, and that one has stuck with a lot of people.
Well, I'm glad I asked too, because you're clearly not just one of these, hack with a trick deck magicians. That's serious. I appreciated hearing Julie explain that even in jobs that might not be considered quote unquote creative, she found ways to express this side of her. It might not sound like that big a deal, but performing a song at a Navy winging ceremony is a pretty bold move. She was always looking for ways to inject creativity in her work and gives great examples here. And as you can probably tell, I'm a sucker for a good card trick and would love to see Julie's with the tomato, but another time, I hope. Now, back to the final segment of my blue sky conversation with Julie Roland. So, Julie, we haven't really even talked about the fact that you have a law degree, and so what? It's exhausting trying to figure out like when you sleep and how you do all these different things. So, what's sort of next on your trajectory for your interests in your career, because it's so varied? So you're still doing the community building, but you have this law degree and you're doing other work, I know, as well. So, sort of what's the future looking like, or the near term for Julie?
Well, we'll see. Last year around this time, I finished law school and then almost immediately started a Master of Laws program with Columbia, which I finished in October. So I got out of the Navy in the middle of that program, but I officially have, I guess, 2 law degrees, but I haven't taken the bar. So that might be something in the near future, is that I decide I should take the bar. But my interest in the law comes more from an interest in policy than it does in practicing as an attorney. Nevertheless, would be good to be a barred attorney and have that as an option. There's a lot of legal work that I do find really compelling. And even while I was in law school, I interned with Legal Aid. I worked with the Children's Advocacy Institute at the University of San Diego, and I worked on some policy with them. I'm very interested in children's advocacy law if I were to go more into a practicing area. But right now, I am working for a elected official, and I'm a district director. So I'm running community engagement for that elected. And that is a cool place to be, because it basically takes the community building that I'm so passionate about and approaches it from this government perspective, which is one that I've since been watching The West Wing, been interested in. And I think what's cool in this role is the hope is that anytime I'm showing up in the community, that I can help increase someone's faith in government, even just 1%. And because I think having faith in government is similar to having faith in the broader community. It's like that we believe that it's worth us all, being a part of something bigger than ourselves. So it's been fun to do that and to engage with my community from that angle. But no matter what comes next, I want to keep promoting the arts and building community. But I really want I want a community focus. I want things to be very rooted in what people actually want and need and care about. And also specifically where I can be the most useful. And so an example of this is that since starting at this job, I went to a veterans event right around Veterans Day, and I met a woman who runs a nonprofit that helps veterans move through their trauma through movement and dance. And they put on dance recitals featuring veterans. It's very much a veteran-run, veteran-led, and starring veterans production. And talking to her, she said that really her nonprofit is one of the last in the area that still is doing really good veterans work and the arts. That there used to be more veterans in the arts programs, and that we've seen a lot of them due to funding or other people's lives, that a lot of them have just kind of faded away. And so when I hear, oh goodness, you're telling me that we could use more veteran and arts collaborations, and well, exactly. So now we are already working on putting Just Trying to Make Friends and her nonprofit, which is called Exit 12, by the way, and they're wonderful, but to put them together and see if we can't create like a variety show that features veterans. So not just dance, but let's help veterans share their stand up or do storytelling or this or that. So that's one idea where I heard that there was a need. And I thought this is a need where I think I have a particular skill set where I can be useful. So I would love to plug in. So I have this day job where I'm doing community engagement on behalf of government, but in my free time, I want to keep looking for opportunities to leverage whatever other skills I have to help and on the biggest scale I can.
Amazing. So, yeah, and the political work you're doing is fascinating to me in that I think, we live in a democracy, obviously. We hear from our politicians on social media or on the news or a talking head show or something on TV. But actually getting people together as a community, this district that votes for this particular politician reminds people, yeah, we are a bunch of people in this district. We are represented by a human being of flesh and blood who has interests. And, I think that's a really effective thing as opposed to, I'll get the little mailer from my rep in the mail and it says, here's my judicial update or whatever, and it goes in recycling. But actually getting human beings in the same space together, I think is a really valuable thing in all sectors. And I think at a time when people are working remotely, they're getting food delivered to their house instead of eating in community, I think all these efforts that you're doing are extremely important and probably more so now than ever.
Thank you. Well, I agree with everything you said. And I'll say that also, my job is not just trying to bring people to the events we're putting on, but more of my job is showing up at the events that the community is already putting on, going there, meeting them where they're at and listening to their issues and making them feel like, because they do, making them feel like they have an ear in our office. And that if they have a need, that we're there to listen and we care. And yeah, that showing up in that way is a beautiful way to increase the accessibility. And to me, that's just another version of the fact that Just Trying to Make Friends made sure to not charge for, that we weren't ticketed, right? It's how do you actually meet people where they're at? Well, we can't just show up and put on an arts show in your backyard, but at least if you come to ours, all you have to do is show up. Similarly, it's like you might not be able to make it to our office. So when you are having a potluck, for your neighborhood association, we'll all be there. And so you can find me there. And I think, yes, it's critical that our government continues to really engage with the community because it can be, it's easy to be siloed. There's so much work to do. Government offices are very busy, or they should be. And I think a lot of people can get elected and then stop for they can forget about the people who helped get them there. But good politicians should actually be representatives. And if you want to represent your community, that means showing presence there. And so it's cool to be part of that mission. And it's special also. I feel really grateful that I got this job, but I think largely the community building that I demonstrated through Just Trying to Make Friends was appealing to them. And I think that's like to their credit, or it makes me feel really good about working there, that they are looking for someone who is trying to engage in the community that way and that they see that as an asset to a government office.
I'm sure. So if someone's listening to this and they think, boy, this Just Trying to Make Friends makes so much sense and I'd like to get involved or create something in my community, what can they do? How can they find out more about you and your work? And what's the best way to do that?
Reach out. So our Instagram for the show is at JTMF show, but also you can reach out to me directly. Mine's at JYROLA. And if you reach out to me, I will respond. I respond to 100% of people who reach out. I'm not always immediate about it because, I keep pretty busy, but I really want to help you do whatever it is you want to do. As long as our values are aligned on this is for community building and it's going to help promote the arts, or if you want to work on some other project that's not JTMF related, but it's a noble cause, if I can help, if I can be useful, then I want to be. So that's it. Just reach out.
Amazing. But Julie, you're a remarkable person. You are just oozing can-do optimism, and I'm so glad you took time out of your busy schedule to be with me today and to tell your story to our listeners. I can't thank you enough, and I wish you continued success in all your great work.
Thank you so much for having me. So nice to talk to you. Thanks for what you do.
Thank you. Take care. With all the challenges we're facing these days, it's refreshing to hear a bright and energetic young person like Julie Roland being so enthusiastic about serving her country and, as she says, restoring people's faith in government. I, for one, look forward to keeping an eye on Julie and know she'll continue to have a positive impact in whatever she decides to do next. I hope you enjoyed this Blue Sky conversation with Julie Roland. Before you go, it would help us a lot if you'd leave us a rating or review. And consider subscribing to the Blue Sky podcast and following the Optimism Institute on social media to be sure you never miss a future episode. My thanks go to Crush Graphics, who's responsible for graphic design and cover art for Blue Sky and the Optimism Institute. And that's Crush with a K, if you'd like to check out more of their fantastic work at crushgraphics.com. And to Sound On, Sound Off, the team behind the incredible editing and mixing of our Blue Sky episodes. You can learn more about their work at soundonsoundoff.com. Until next time, I'm the founder of the Optimism Institute and host of Blue Sky, Bill Burke, and I thank you for listening.